Thank you, everyone, for your time this afternoon and this morning. My name is Yodit. I run Open Sensors. And as most of you are thinking about your return to work strategies, some of you have already started your return to work phasing, we get a lot of questions. And I think there's a lot of confusion around what is the appropriate kind of cleaning regime, kind of dispelling some COVID myths and so forth. So I'm really honored and really interested to be joined by an expert, Christian Harris, today. He is the founder of Slip Safety Services and Decontamination Cleaning, and he has tons and tons of experience in this area. Just to kind of go over what we'll be covering. Again, there's a lot of inaccuracies around COVID cleaning itself. What are the standards? How do I know something is clean? Just kind of how do I maintain it? How does it going to change from pre and post? And how to test it, really kind of getting assurance and being able to be both compliant with standards and also kind of keeping everyone reassured within the organization. As I said, my name is Yodit. I'll be asking questions and managing the kind of the webinar. My background is in computer science, and now I run Open Sensors, and we think very deeply around data, space optimization, and so forth. And with COVID, I think that's just kind of completely changing the way our buildings are managed. So a lot of the areas that we weren't really concerned with before are starting to come in, and people are leveraging data to manage buildings more and more. And then without further ado, over to you, Christian.
Hi, Yodit. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Christian Harris, and in a nutshell, I'm on a mission to make the world a cleaner, safer, and more hygienic place. How's that for an elevator pitch?
Very good. I like it. So I guess we'll just dive straight in because we've got a lot to cover today. Can you talk a little bit about the cleanliness and safety in terms of like what standard do we need to get to post-COVID to reopen in your view?
Sure. So, I mean, it's important to get this right. And I think, we're seeing a lot of information about this and a lot of companies and organizations with a really strong will to get it right. So I think the key point is to really understand what we're trying to achieve. So the risk of getting the virus is obviously if you're not in a socially distanced place and somebody's breathing droplets of air, and that's what breath, and that's what is going to contain the virus, or through transmission with surfaces. So those droplets go onto a surface, you then touch the surface like in this photo, and then you touch your face, and that's how the virus is transmitted. So, as well as obviously social distancing and things like PPE and rearranging workspaces, cleaning and hygiene is a really critical factor to get this right. And I think the key thing to understand is really that we cannot have a surface that's hygienically clean, i.e. it's been disinfected, until we've kind of thoroughly cleaned it physically first. So that's the really important.
And is there a recommendation on the regime post-COVID, and how does that change pre-COVID? I mean, what is your view there?
I think that we're going to see a shift in emphasis of the importance of cleanliness and hygiene. So I think historically, if you were to have spoken to any customer-facing business, they would say that cleanliness was important. But I think that in reality, they would have been under-investing in cleaning, which is the delivery mechanism to achieve cleanliness. But going forward, we just can't do that, because everybody now understands that we need to be doing more frequent cleaning, particularly of these high touch point areas. And so we are going to have to invest in this and do it better. We can drive some efficiencies, but we've got to be effective. That's the most important thing. So we need to try and do this better going forward.
Is there clear guidance on the regularity, or are people how are people approaching it? How would you recommend your approach?
I think you need to have a pragmatic and common sense approach. You can't be cleaning every single door handle after everybody's touched it, for example. That's just not possible to do as an operator of a building. What you might consider doing is asking the users of the building to help you by cleaning door handles or gym equipment or whatever it might be after they've used it, or kitchen utensils or things like that, which would assist you. I think the important thing here is just to really try and stay on top of it as best you can. So get up to that right standard. Ideally, as I think we're going to talk about in a bit, do some sort of quantification and be able to prove that you've done that correctly, and then stay on top of it with kind of frequent cleaning and sanitizing of different areas. We can't expect every environment in every building to be medically sterile. So we're not aiming for that, but we are aiming for sanitized and disinfected, clean as a minimum.
And how long do you see the heightened requirement to last for?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think that it's gonna last at least until we've got a vaccine, or we feel as if we've got the virus under control. So we're a long way away from that. If you said that, currently or historically, until in a pre-COVID world, the level of cleanliness and hygiene was kind of somewhere here, let's say. Now it's going to be right up here. Once we've got the vaccine and everything settles down, we'll probably see it falling back a little bit again. But I'm hopeful and optimistic that we won't kind of return back to cleaning being as undervalued as it has been in the past.
It's interesting seeing cleaning becoming part of the well-being agenda and really taking priority. With that comes a lot of misinformation and a lot of new players in the market. And I've seen you talk a lot about that as well. Like, how big of a problem do you think that the kind of the misinformation and the confusion is, whether deliberate or not?
Yeah, well, I think misinformation on this topic can obviously be potentially fatal. So we've got to take it very seriously, as we would with anything else that has such serious potential repercussions. So there are a lot of companies out there that have started claiming to be experts on cleaning and hygiene and so on and so forth. And so we've just got to take everything with a bit of a pinch of salt and look at if you're outsourcing your cleaning to somebody, particularly any specialist cleaning like this, have they got the credentials? Have they got relationships with blue chip clients and people like insurers and lawyers and things like that to give them that credibility? We are seeing a lot of kind of Ghostbusters outfits and videos of fogging and spraying and so on and so forth. I'd be very cautious about that, because that is going to be wholly ineffective unless you're doing proper cleaning first, for example. And even if you are doing proper cleaning first, are these people qualified and do they understand what they're doing, and are they doing it properly? Big question marks. And I think, as I said earlier, business leaders want to be on top of this. Nobody's sitting there saying, I don't care about this. Everybody wants to be doing it properly and looking after their staff and ensuring the well-being of their staff and customers. So it's just about taking that extra step to really doubly check that what you're doing is actually going to be working.
I've seen people say, they're kind of, basically previously cleaners came in at the end of the day, after the shift when everyone's left. And then now we're seeing quite extreme versions of people cleaning each desk quite, well, to me it seems quite a lot, all the time and in rotation. What's your view on the right balance for an office space?
Yeah, I think in an office space we've got to again be pragmatic and practical. We can't expect, as I said, every single square centimetre of every single surface to be sterile, but there are some things we could do to maybe help achieve the right outcome, which is as safe an environment as possible. So if you think about desks, for example, if at the end of the day there was a thoroughly enforced clean desk policy, that would mean that the cleaning operatives coming in the evening would be able to clean and sanitize that desk much more quickly and effectively than if they were having to move things around and tidy up after people. So things like that could be a nice practical way of kind of helping people on the mission. If you think about a keyboard, for example, you're the only person that's going to be touching your keyboard, I would suspect. So if you've got your own desk, so you should be taking some responsibility for cleaning up your desk and your area and your telephone and things like that as well. I think, as well as members of staff or building users taking responsibility for things like door handles, water fountains, and so on and so forth. So I think we've got to look at this as a team sport. As you say, cleaning has historically been done overnight and not necessarily during the day. I think we'll see a bit of a shift to more kind of janitorial kinds of cleaning during the day, or a presence at least during the day, and to be helping with kind of touch point cleaning. But equally, to do any proper cleaning, you really do need to be kind of there out of hours, I would suggest, where people aren't getting in your way, and you can be doing stuff in the right way and efficiently and effectively.
Because you said about people's responsibilities, would you give them sanitizers, and if so, what type of sanitizers?
Yeah, I think that would be a responsible thing to do. If I were going down that route, and this is something I've been talking about a lot in the leisure sector and gyms where we do a lot of work, I personally would be giving people wipes rather than sprays, because I can just see somebody spraying themselves in the face or spraying someone else in the face, not deliberately, inadvertently, of course, but I could see there's a risk there, whereas with the wipe it's much easier. There's also an issue around certain types of IT as well, and other kind of assets, electronic assets, that you're often not supposed to be spraying those. So I think wipes, for that reason, I would be giving out wipes liberally for people to use, as well as, of course, things like hand sanitizing units and stuff, which everybody does seem to be working on.
If you were going into, if we switch focus to more deep cleaning, because I know a lot of people are doing regular deep cleaning nowadays, what would be the key points I should know if I was starting one of these regimes?
Well, I think the most important question is, what is a deep clean? When I see or hear people talking about doing regular deep cleaning, I sort of raise my eyebrows a bit, and I think, I suspect they don't really know what deep cleaning is. So my son's school, for example, is closing early on a Friday to do a deep clean of the school over 2 or 3 hours, I guess. Now, unless they've got an army of worker ants with every single piece of equipment under the sun, they're not going to be doing a deep clean, as I understand a deep clean to be. So they're probably going to be just doing some more effective maintenance, kind of daily type of cleaning. So I think understanding the definitions of what you're looking to achieve is really important. So what is cleaning, what is sanitization, what is disinfection, just making sure you're doing things in an appropriate way. Any building that's been closed for any amount of time is going to benefit from having some kind of a deep clean done to it, but the level to which you need to be doing what I would call a deep clean versus what a layperson might call a deep clean is going to depend on the environment and the contamination and the soiling and things. So if you're operating a big office building and you've got a gym and a restaurant and an industrial kitchen, because you're serving meals all the time, those environments are going to need kind of more proper deep cleaning than your desks and your sort of communal areas, which are going to need more of a kind of hygiene clean. But it is important to do that clean thoroughly before you then seek to go down the route of doing any kind of sanitizing or disinfecting, because any dust, any grease, any kind of barrier at all on top of the surface will render sanitizing or disinfection almost useless. It just will stop the surface from being hygienically cleaned.
And then when we spoke previously, you said there was a difference between was it clean, sanitize, disinfect? Can you clarify? Because I had no idea.
Yeah, sure. And again, the terms can often be misunderstood. So cleaning is removing soiling from a surface. So that's a physical act of removing something. And I like to give the analogy of doing your dishes at home. So if you don't have a washing up machine, and you've got sort of heavily greasy dishes, then what you're going to do is you're going to put them into to the sink to soak in some kind of detergent washing up liquid solution. But that's not cleaning them. The cleaning them bit is when you're taking them out of there and rinsing them under the tap, because the cleaning bit is the removal of the soiling. So taking away soiling from a surface, again, whether it's grease or dust or whatever it might be, that's cleaning. Sanitizing is reducing the amount of bacteria, germs, viruses on the surface, and disinfection is removing bacteria, dirt, viruses. So it's important to understand what you're doing and make sure that your definition meets the outcome that you want to achieve. So we need to clean, then we may want to disinfect, and then after that we could be doing sanitizing to kind of stay on top of it.
And you touched on fogging previously.
Yeah.
What are those things? Because I've seen fogging, UV.
Yeah, there's all sorts of ways of achieving sort of disinfections or sanitization. So there are two common methods of applying sanitizer or disinfectant that are these kind of, they look the same. That the kind of you'll see people dressed up in their Ghostbusters outfits and sort of holding machines which are directionally shooting out an atomized liquid. Fogging is done directionally, whereas electrostatic is a little bit more technological. You put an electro charge into the chemical, and then it kind of envelops surfaces. So they're slightly different even there in the way that they work. Neither of those, just to be clear, are cleaning. So one of the bits of misinformation I'm seeing a lot is, we're doing electrostatic cleaning. Well, no, you're not, because electrostatic doesn't clean. It's designed to envelop a surface, and that, that's not cleaning, because cleaning is removing stuff from a surface. So both of those methods can be very useful. You can also sanitize or disinfect manually as well. So the wipes is a way of doing it, and there's also technology like UV lights which can be used for disinfection as well. Just be wary of that on certain surfaces, and that's maybe less user friendly because you need to have empty rooms. So there's a plethora of ways to do it. And again, that's why some of this misinformation or misunderstanding is arising, because there's a lot of technical information there to try to digest, and building owners, facility managers, can't be expected to be experts on all this. So they're trying to rely on third parties to advise them. And sometimes, it's fair to say that even these third parties don't necessarily know everything that they should about this topic.
Has any product actually been proven to work?
I did an interview the other day with a guy called Dr. Andrew Kemp, who's probably the UK's leading expert on disinfection and decontamination, and he was quite scathing about the fact that the WHO and Public Health England simply haven't put any disinfectants through rigorous enough processes until now to be able to prove conclusively that they do actually kill the virus. So, yes, there are lots of products which have been proven to kill, types of coronavirus or other enveloped viruses. So we have a view that certain processes will work, but the 100% clarity proof is still to be fully gathered. It is true to say, though, that the less clean a surface is, the more contamination, the more soiling there is on the surface, the greater the chance there is of stuff attaching to it and things building up. So the cleaner you can keep surfaces, whether that's, as we all know, our hands or touch points, then the lower the risk.
Just another question from the audience. It says, what is your opinion on the use of electrostatic sprayers versus foggers versus regular sprayers, and is the expense of the electrostatic sprayers worth it?
I mean, we're a service business, so we go in and we do this kind of cleaning and disinfection work, and we use electrostatic sprayers ourselves. I believe that because of the way that they allow the disinfectant to envelop the surface, that you reduce the risk of human error. So any process in any walk of life that requires humans to do it, we're all flawed, and we have good days and bad days, and good moments and bad moments, and therefore there's always a risk of that human element. So anything that can be done to reduce that, I think, is a good thing. And it can also, obviously, get to some places that humans necessarily can't touch or wouldn't touch for whatever reason. So I think there are some benefits to doing that.
Another question is, how do you recommend companies manage the sanitization of conference rooms and phone booths between users? As in, would you want it sanitized in between use?
I mean, again, you've got to be pragmatic here. I would suggest things like phone booths. Then yes, I think you should be saying to people that are using them, right, here are some. Firstly, sanitize your hands, and secondly, here are some wipes that you can use to wipe the surfaces down after you've finished. So, in gyms, for example, the guidance from UK Active, which is the industry association, is about getting users to clean equipment pre and post workout. So, a telephone booth could be the same thing. A desk, for example. There's no reason why it doesn't take very long. Why people couldn't be asked to do that in between times. I think, would you be buying an electrostatic sprayer and spraying around sanitizer or disinfectant between meetings? I think that's probably overkill. But I think, giving it a good clean once a day as a minimum, but maybe twice a day or something like that. It's all about what's reasonable and practical.
Within an office environment, the way people are managing the return to work is they start with a small amount of utilization. So they get a small group of people in, and then they're going to increase over time. Would you change the cleaning regime effectively based on the number of people within the office? How does that even have an impact? What's your view on this?
I think to some extent you might be able to change things a little bit. I think it's more though about the areas that are in use. So if you're opening up your office and you've got 10% occupancy, but you're utilizing 100% of your space, then actually your cleaning needs to be across 100% of the space. So if I were opening up and wanting to have fewer people in the office, I would be seeing if I could close down areas or put areas out of use. And that means that I wouldn't have to worry about those because, if they're not in use, then we don't need to worry about the risk of any transmission of any diseases or anything like that. So I think, that there's that side of things to consider. But on top of that, again, we are going to need. There is an expectation we are going to need to be doing more frequent cleaning. So there probably will need to be additional labour and thought about additional equipment or additional consumables, etc., to support the ongoing cleaning of touch points, because that is the big thing that the government and others are talking about, making sure we're staying on top of these high frequency touch points like door handles, toilet handles, sinks, sink taps and things like that.
How do you know that the cleaning provider, whether it's contractor or in-house, is actually meeting the standard?
Yeah, so this is this slide actually on screen is a way of looking at this. So this is what I call 3D cleanliness. Mm-hmm. So wind back to the old world, as in January. How are we judging cleaning, or how are we judging cleanliness? Probably more specifically, does it look okay? There was an element of, does it smell okay as well? But we were looking at it quite superficially. Going forward, I think we need to be looking at this in a much more rigorous way. And there are three kind of axes here that you can look at. There's standards, which is subjective. So, how does it look? Yes, that's part of it. How does it feel? What does it smell like as well? But then we can go beyond that into hygiene. So you can have a surface that looks clean but isn't hygienic. And I use the analogy of if you're going in for an operation and you saw the surgeon spitting on his handkerchief and wiping the scalpel with it, you'd feel pretty reluctant to go under the knife. But had you been wheeled into that room and the scalpel was sitting on the table and the surgeon had just done that, it would look clean. So you'd be none the wiser and you'd be happy as Larry to carry on. So just because something looks clean doesn't necessarily mean that there's not germs, bacteria, or viruses on it. And when it comes to floors, there's another way you can look at it, which is similar, is the slip resistance of floors. So again, a floor can look aesthetically clean, but be very slippery when wet. And that's a good barometer of how clean a surface is. So the bottom two are measurable and quantifiable, which is useful because we can put a number to it. And as you know, in your line of business, you know, if you can put a number to something, then you can try and manage it and do something to improve that number. Whereas if we're at the top and we're just in this kind of subjective world, it becomes much more difficult. So I would be wanting to have a conversation with my cleaning provider or my cleaning team, if it was done in-house, about how we can get some measurement and proof into the work that they're doing.
And can you just elaborate a bit more about signage and what is appropriate? I think you did a LinkedIn post recently where you talked about the slip resistance of signage as well.
Oh yeah, no, I did. Yeah, that was an interesting one. So, I mean, everybody's putting out signs, obviously, about social distancing, albeit those are going to be probably changing, a lot of them, now that we've gone from 2 meters to what's the expression? Up to 2 meters, or ideally 2 meters, or whatever it is. But what we saw actually recently was basically a property owner who had bought loads of these signs and stuck them down on various floors, both interior and exterior, and they found that people were slipping over on them. So they were sticking them onto kind of paving slabs outside, which were very slip resistant even when wet, but they were introducing this kind of smooth surface on the floor to try to promote safety, but actually they found they were causing a safety issue because they were having people slipping and falling over and hurting themselves. So I think with the majority of these signs are probably smooth, and therefore they're likely to be slippery when wet. Just look out for what the suppliers are telling you, because there is a European standard which is likely to present itself in the form of being called an R9 anti-slip surface. That's a European standard. It's not relevant in the UK, and under the UK standard, which is a pendulum test, an R9 surface is actually very, very slippery and certainly not appropriate for use in any environment that is likely to get wet, such as external to a building. So just be, again, the devil's in the detail. Just be wary of what you're getting.
So we're getting quite a lot of questions around more permanent or at least long-term solutions. But is there technology that provides anything that's either permanent, or some people are stating 6 weeks of application? What is your view?
So there are various products and technologies in the market that are claiming to be effective for certain periods of time. Again, I would exercise some caution, because if they are indeed effective over the long term, and that's an if in the first place, they won't have been tested against COVID-19. So they might be effective against other things, but nobody knows for sure that they're going to be effective against COVID-19. One of the challenges about this is that, yes, you can apply a product which will kind of coat the surface in some way, which you won't see, and it will provide some ongoing protection potentially. And certainly under lab conditions, some of these products are quite proven. But in the real world, as soon as that surface becomes contaminated again, if it's not then cleaned in some way and sanitized again, it will be able to harbor the virus. So you still need to be doing your ongoing touch point cleaning and sanitizing. It doesn't get you away from doing that. What it does, though, potentially do is demonstrate your keenness to get this right and to take it seriously, and it might give a bit more comfort to the users of the building, whether they be staff or members of the public. So I'm certainly not against the idea, and we're offering one of these types of products as a service, but we're making it very clear that all those caveats exist. So there are benefits to doing this, because remember, there's two sides to cleaning and making buildings safe. There's the are we doing it properly side, can we look ourselves in the mirror side, can we stand in front of the judge if it ever came to that and be sure we've done things properly aspect. And on the other hand, there's we need to promote confidence among the users of our building, our team, our clients, whatever it might be, that we're taking it seriously. And so things like electrostatic spraying or fogging and things like these kind of protective products are good ways of certainly of giving more confidence to people that you're taking it seriously as an organisation.
We're getting to the end of this super interesting chat, but if you had kind of key takeaways, what would you want people to take away from what we've talked about today?
So yeah, so the 4 points here, I think probably the 3 first points are the key ones, which are you've got to try and get your process right, because if you don't get it right, then you're not really achieving much. So there's no point, sending an army of cleaning staff in to do something if they're not going to do it properly.
Mm-hmm.
I think secondly, you need to get some proof around this. So doing some of this testing, but also really closely documenting what you've done. We work with a lot of law firms and insurers and brokers, and we're already starting to see signs and indeed some real claims coming through to do with this. So people are going to be saying, "Oh, I've got the virus. It's my employer's fault," or "I've got the virus. It's my gym's fault," or "It's my shopping centre's fault," or whatever it might be. So being able to document what you've done and why is really important from that perspective. And then I think thirdly, it's about communicating. So again, there's the communication aspect around getting the users of the building to buy into the fact they need to help you to drive this forward, which I think people will. And they need to follow the processes, and they need to clean their own desks and so on. But there's also that communication piece around giving confidence to those people that you've thought this through properly, you've done it effectively, you've documented everything, and it is safe for them to come back to work.
Yeah, and then I think just on the slide it says no miracle products, and that's my takeaway, because just looking at the Q&As, everyone is asking about specific products and their claims, and it seems to me that this point of misinformation that you raised earlier is much more prolific than I had actually imagined.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of these products that are out there, the manufacturer makes them, but they don't go and sell them, and they're often being sold through distributors. And I would say it's a bit like Chinese whispers. By the time you get to the manufacturer says something to the MD of the distributor, who then briefs their sales team, who then briefs, or the sales manager, who then briefs the sales team, and you're losing potentially some clarity on each step of that. I'm very happy if my details are there. If people want to contact me, with any specifics, and if they send me, safety data sheets and any marketing materials about particular products, I'll be able to look at them and tell you what are the pros and the cons and how likely are they to be effective. As I say, it's not just about, is it effective? It's also about the confidence piece as well. But obviously, you'd rather get both aspects right if you could.
If it sounds too good to be true, it possibly is.
It probably is, yeah.
Nothing replaces the first principles and the cornerstones of actually just doing the work.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. It's probably a fair expression.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Christian. It's been one of the most interesting chats I've had. Certainly kind of something that I think we all are going to start learning more and more about. And thank you for the attendees. Really appreciate your time. So with that, I'm going to give you back your time and your day. And thank you so much again, Christian.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.